All right, fight fans, welcome back to POP Podcast. Are you guys ready for another deep dive into the world of UFC?
I am absolutely pumped. I love breaking down these fights, seeing what went right, what went wrong, what surprised us.
Yeah, especially with a card like UFC 313. I mean, seriously, we had upsets, title changes, knockouts, submissions.
It was nonstop action from the first bell to the last. And you know me, I love a good upset.
Okay, so speaking of upsets, can we talk about the main event for a second? Magomed Ankalaev defeating Alex Pereira to become the new UFC Light Heavyweight Champ.
Dude, nobody saw that coming. Pereira was the favorite. He was ranked number 2 pound for pound by ESPN.
Yeah, and he's a former champ, too. So to see Ankalaev pull off that win,
It was incredible. You could see Pereira starting strong, but Ankalaev just wore him down round after round.
it makes you wonder, was that part of Ankalaev's game plan all along, or...
Maybe he exposed a weakness in Pereira's game that we hadn't seen before.
And don't forget, Ankalaev is on a 14-fight winning streak now.
14. That's insane. Especially in the light heavyweight division.
That's got to put him in the conversation for one of the most dominant light heavyweights of all time.
Absolutely. He's definitely a force to be reckoned with.
This is why I love UFC, man. You never know what's going to happen. It's like a real-life Rocky movie every time. And if you guys are loving this deep dive, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future breakdowns.
Definitely hit that subscribe button. We've got so much more UFC goodness coming your way.
All right, so we talked about the main event, the huge upset, but let's move on to another fight that had everyone talking Ben. The co-main event, Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev. This was a rematch.
Oh, yeah, and what a rematch it was. Their first fight back in March was a split decision.
Gaethje barely edged out the win. And this time around, it was another close fight.
But Gaethje took home the victory again. Unanimous decision this time.
It's got to feel good for Gaethje to get 2 wins over a tough opponent like Fiziev.
Especially since Fiziev stepped in as a last-minute replacement for Dan Hooker.
That's right. Hooker had a hand injury, so Fiziev stepped up on short notice. And Gaethje still managed to beat him twice.
Seriously impressive. It shows you the kind of heart and determination Gaethje has.
So 2 wins over Fiziev. Does that put Gaethje in line for a title shot?
He's definitely in the mix. The lightweight division is stacked with talent, though.
For sure. You've got Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier, Islam Makhachev, just to name a few.
It's going to be interesting to see who the UFC matches Gaethje up with next.
Okay, so we covered the main event, the co-main event, but UFC 313 was full of exciting fights from top to bottom.
Absolutely. The undercard was stacked with talent and some really impressive performances.
For example, Jamie Turner submitting Ignacio Bahamondes in the first round with a rear naked choke.
And who could forget Kevin Green knocking out Malik Ruffy also in the first round?
These guys came to fight. They didn't waste any time.
And that's what makes UFC so exciting. It's unpredictable and you never know what's going to happen.
1 minute a fighter is on top of the world, the next minute they're staring up at the lights.
It's a wild ride and we wouldn't have it any other way.
All right, so we've talked about some of the biggest moments from UFC 313, but what does it all mean for the future of the sport?
That's the big question, isn't it? We've got a new champion in the light heavyweight division, some potential title contenders emerging in the lightweight division, and a whole new crop of fighters making their mark.
It's like the UFC landscape is constantly shifting and evolving.
Exactly. And that's what keeps things so interesting for us fans.
So where do we go from here? What are some of the matchups you're most excited to see in the future?
Oh man, there are so many possibilities. But for starters, I'd love to see Ankalaev face Gigi Prochaska.
Oh man, that would be a clash of styles.
Prochaska is so unorthodox, always moving forward, throwing those spinning elbows and flying knees.
And Ankalaev is so calm and calculated with his striking.
It would be a total war.
Yeah, and don't forget about Jan Brushevich.
Another former champ with a ton of experience.
You could definitely pose a threat to Ankalaev.
The light heavyweight division is wide open right now.
And speaking of wide open, how about the lightweight division with Justin Gaethje?
Oh man, Gaethje's always must-see TV.
2 wins over Fiziev, that's huge.
He's got to be in the title conversation.
So who do you think he should fight next? Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier.
Those would be amazing matchups.
Oliveira with his jiu-jitsu, Poirier with his boxing, Gaethje with his relentless pressure.
I don't know who I'd pick in any of those fights.
They would all be so close and so exciting.
And you know, Gaethje always brings it. He's never in a boring fight.
Yeah, he leaves it all in the octagon every time.
It's inspiring to watch.
So we talk about the big names, the title contenders, but what about some of the other fighters from UFC 313 who impressed you?
Jamie Turner's submission win was beautiful.
Yeah, he looked so dominant on the ground.
It's like Bahamondes had no answer for his grappling.
And Kevin Green's knockout was brutal.
When my punch lights out.
It just shows you the power these guys possess.
And it's not just about power, it's about technique and timing.
Yeah, they train so hard to perfect their craft.
They're true athletes.
And it's not just about physical strength, it's about mental toughness too.
You gotta be able to push through the pain and adversity.
These guys are warriors.
Absolutely. And they put it all on the line every time they step into the octagon.
It's a privilege to watch them compete.
I agree. And I can't wait to see what the future holds for all these fighters.
Me neither. UFC is in a good place right now.
The talent pool is deeper than ever.
And the fights are more exciting than ever.
It's a great time to be a UFC fan.
So if you're not already watching UFC, what are you waiting for?
Tune in and see what all the hype is about.
You won't regret it. And if you're already a fan,
make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel.
We've got tons of great UFC content coming your way. So we've got this new landscape in the UFC, right? Like what we were just talking about with Ankalaev at the top of the light heavyweight division and Gaethje making a real run in the lightweight division. Where do we even go from here?
Well, the beauty of the UFC is that it's constantly evolving. You never really know what's going to happen next. But if I had to pick some dream matchups based on what we saw at UFC 313.
Okay, let's hear it. What are you thinking?
For Ankalaev, I think a fight against Jiu Prochazka would be absolutely insane.
Oh my God, Prochazka. That would be fireworks.
Right, he's got such a unique, unpredictable style, all those spinning elbows and flying knees.
And Ankalaev is so patient, so technical.
It would be a clash of styles for sure, and I honestly don't know who would win.
Yeah, that's a tough one to call. And what about in the lightweight division? You mentioned some potential matchups for Gaethje.
I mean, a fight against Charles Oliveira, that would be legendary.
Oliveira, the jiu-jitsu wizard.
Exactly. He's got the most finishes in UFC history. And then you've got Gaethje with his insane knockout power.
And those leg kicks. Don't forget about the leg kicks.
Oh, yeah. Gaethje's leg kicks are brutal. I wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of those.
So Oliveira's jiu-jitsu versus Gaethje's striking. That's a fascinating matchup.
And then, of course, you can't forget about Dustin Poirier.
The Diamond?
He's a former interim champ. He's beaten some of the best guys in the world.
A Gaethje versus Poirier fight. That would be a war.
No doubt about it. Those two guys would just stand and trade punches for 5 rounds.
I can already picture it. The crowd would go wild.
Yeah, that's the kind of fight that gets you on the edge of your seat.
And it's not just about the big names, the title contenders. It's also about the up-and-coming fighters like Jamie Turner and Kevin Green.
Those guys are the future of the sport.
They're hungry, they're talented, and they're exciting to watch.
And you know what? That's what makes UFC so great. It's constantly evolving.
There's always something new to see.
New fighters, new matchups, new stories.
And it's all happening on the biggest stage in the world.
That's right. The UFC is a global phenomenon.
And it's only getting bigger.
So if you haven't already jumped on the UFC bandwagon, now is the time.
You won't regret it.
And if you're already a fan,
make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel.
We're going to keep bringing you the best UFC coverage out there.
Deep dives, fight breakdowns, interviews.
We've got it all.
So stay tuned, fight fans. And thanks for joining us on this epic journey through UFC 313.
We'll catch you next time for another exciting breakdown.